You have arrived here because something within you stirs restlessly in the depths. Perhaps you cannot name it yet, this force that moves beneath your conscious awareness. It may have appeared as exhaustion that sleep cannot cure, or as emotions that feel too vast for your body to contain. You feel the wounds of strangers as though they were carved into your own flesh. You absorb the grief of the woman at the grocery store, the rage of your coworker, the anxiety that seems to seep from the very walls around you. And perhaps you have been told that this sensitivity makes you weak, that it marks you as broken, destined only to suffer under the weight of a world that feels too much. But I tell you now that this wound is not your ending. It is your beginning. It is the very portal through which you will rise, not as a victim of your sensitivity, but as a warrior forged in the furnace of shadow work. Carl Jung understood that the psyche does not waste its pain. Every wound carries within it the seed of transformation, but only if we dare to descend into its depths rather than flee from its discomfort. Your empathic gift was not given to you as punishment, but as initiation into the most profound work a human soul can undertake. Before we dive deeper, if this resonates with your soul's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe for more transformational content. Your support helps this message reach other souls who need to hear it. Let us not romanticize the empath's wound. It bleeds. It has convinced you at times that life itself is too much, that you were made too porous, too unprotected to survive this brutal world. This is your introduction to shadow, not merely the darkness you see in others, but the disowned aspects of yourself. The empath's wound often begins in childhood. You learn to read the emotional weather of your household before storms could break over you. You developed internal radar that could detect the slightest shift in mood, the smallest tremor of disapproval. You felt your mother's unconscious despair before she spoke it, your father's rage before the door slammed. Because you were powerless as a child, this sensitivity felt like curse. You could feel everything, but change nothing. Feeling without power becomes trauma. But hear this truth: the very sensitivity that once left you defenseless contains the power to raise you beyond the shadow. Through the mystery of what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, you became a living bridge between souls. The pain you carry connects you to the archetypal pattern of the wounded healer. This is Chiron the centaur, struck by an incurable arrow, who became the greatest teacher of healing. This is every mystic who walked the razor's edge between madness and revelation. You are not simply broken. You are an heir to this ancient lineage of those who transform suffering into wisdom. To understand your transformation, you must first face what Carl Jung called the shadow. This is everything you have disowned about yourself because you believed it was too dangerous to acknowledge. For empaths, the shadow often contains rage, selfishness, and hunger for power. You have lived so long in service to others that you have cast these natural human drives into the basement of your psyche. You tell yourself, "I am the compassionate one, the understanding one, the one who carries others." But beneath this identity lies a reservoir of fury you dare not touch. You fear this anger will consume you or make you like those who wounded you. But without claiming your rage, you cannot become whole. Without descending into your darkness, you cannot rise. The warrior archetype emerges not from denial, but when you retrieve the sword hidden in your soul's basement. The shadow may visit you in dreams, images of fire battles, monsters pursuing you. These are not meaningless phantoms, but your psyche demanding that you stop running. The monster is your repressed power. The battlefield is your inner landscape. When you turn to face the beast in your dreams, you reclaim fragments of yourself long banished. Your fear often disguises itself as compassion. You believe you must absorb others' pain to prove your worth. You call it love, but deep down, you feel the hollowing out of your being. This is the tragedy of unclaimed shadow. When you do not hold your power, others sense this and feed upon you like hungry ghosts. The fear of being seen as selfish keeps you trapped in cycles of depletion. But Carl Jung, empath and personal development work reveals that boundaries are not rejection. They are alignment. They become the shield that allows your sword of discernment to strike only where it must. Jung's technique of active imagination becomes your royal road to shadow integration. This is not passive daydreaming, but conscious engagement with the figures that arise from your unconscious depths. In a relaxed, meditative state, you invite these aspects of yourself to speak. You might encounter the wounded child who learned that survival meant anticipating others' needs. This child carries both your vulnerability and your intuitive gifts. Listen without judgment, as this part reveals how sensitivity became a survival strategy. Perhaps you meet the inner critic who whispers that your needs don't matter, that caring for yourself is selfish. This voice often sounds like disapproving caregivers from your past. Thank this part for trying to protect you, but explain that its methods no longer serve. Most powerfully, you may encounter the warrior aspect you've kept hidden. This figure might initially frighten you with its fierceness, but it carries the strength you need to protect your authentic self. The warrior does not seek to dominate others, but to maintain sovereignty over your inner realm. Through active imagination, these internal figures begin to dialogue rather than battle. The child's vulnerability integrates with the warrior's strength. The critic's discernment serves the authentic self rather than destroying it. This is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the integration of all aspects of the psyche into conscious wholeness. Your dreams become maps in this process. Common empath dreams include floods representing overwhelming emotions, battles symbolizing internal conflict, and monsters that transform into allies when faced with courage. Each nightmare is an invitation to reclaim power you have disowned. The medieval alchemists sought to transform base metal into gold, but Jung recognized this as a metaphor for psychological transformation. Your lead, the weight of unprocessed trauma and disowned power, becomes gold through the fire of conscious shadow work. This transformation requires what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposites in creative tension. You learn to be both sensitive and strong, compassionate, and boundaried, open-hearted, and discerning. This is not about becoming hard or closed, but about developing what I call flexible strength, like bamboo that bends without breaking. The warrior archetype that emerges from this work differs vastly from the aggressor. This is the spiritual warrior who serves a higher order, like Michael the Archangel wielding his flaming sword against the dragon of unconsciousness. Your sensitivity becomes armor when integrated with shadow. For you no longer fear in others what you have claimed in yourself. When you own your darkness, others' darkness cannot manipulate you. When you claim your rage, their anger cannot devastate you. When you embrace your selfishness, you stop falling prey to those who shame you for having needs. In this integration, you become truly unstoppable. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you become whole. The process requires multiple deaths and rebirths. The people-pleasing self must die for the authentic self to emerge. The victim identity must fall away for the sovereign to arise. Like the phoenix, you can only rise from the ashes of who you used to be. Carl Jung, empath and personal development work shows us that this transformation serves not just personal healing, but collective evolution. As you integrate your shadow, you stop projecting it onto others. You become a conscious participant in relationships rather than an unconscious reactor. The empath's greatest fear often centers around boundaries. Terrified that saying no makes them selfish, that protecting their energy means abandoning others. But mature boundaries emerge from love, not fear. They protect your ability to serve from fullness rather than emptiness. True boundaries are energetic before they are verbal. When you integrate your shadow warrior, you naturally emanate a field that says, "I am here, I am present, and I will not be consumed." Others sense this shift before you speak a word. The guilt that arises when setting boundaries signals that you are healing a core wound. This discomfort means you are choosing your authentic self over your conditioned patterns. Each time you honor your truth despite internal resistance, the warrior within grows stronger. You begin to understand that saying no to others becomes saying yes to your soul's deepest calling. You stop rescuing others from their own growth opportunities. Instead of carrying their burdens, you model what it looks like to carry your own with dignity and strength. This shift from rescuer to witness represents a profound evolution in consciousness. You can hold space for others' pain without absorbing it. You can offer presence without depleting your essence. This is the true healing gift of the integrated empath. Your relationships become the most powerful classroom for shadow integration. Every person who triggers you carries a message about aspects of yourself you have not yet reclaimed. The colleague who seems too aggressive may mirror your disowned assertiveness. The friend who appears selfish might reflect your unexpressed needs. Jung taught that we fall in love with our projections and go to war with our shadows. When you recognize that your strongest reactions to others reveal your own disowned qualities, relationships transform from battlegrounds into opportunities for wholeness. The people who have hurt you most deeply often carry the greatest gifts for your development. They force you to confront parts of yourself you would rather deny. The narcissist who violated your boundaries reveals your own need for healthy narcissism, appropriate self-love, and self-protection. This does not mean excusing abusive behavior or remaining in harmful relationships. Rather, it means extracting the psychological gold from difficult experiences. You thank these teachers for showing you what you need to reclaim, and then you create the distance necessary for your healing. As your shadow integration deepens, you stop attracting relationships based on complementary wounds. Instead, you begin drawing people who can meet you in your wholeness rather than your brokenness. This represents a fundamental shift in your energetic frequency. Carl Jung, empath, and personal development teachings remind us that individuation is not a solitary journey, but one that ultimately serves relationships and community. As you become whole, you invite others into their own wholeness. Shadow work is not a destination, but a lifelong practice. You create daily rituals that keep you connected to all aspects of your psyche. Morning reflection might involve asking, "What am I trying to avoid?" Feeling today. Evening inventory could explore, "What did I project onto others today?" Journaling becomes a dialogue with your various internal voices. Let your inner critic write for 5 minutes, then let your compassionate self respond. Allow your angry child to rant on paper, followed by your wise adult offering understanding and boundaries. Your body holds tremendous wisdom about shadow material. Notice where you tense when certain topics arise. Breathe into these places of contraction and ask what they need to tell you. Anger might live in your jaw, fear in your chest, shame in your belly. Each sensation carries information about disowned aspects seeking integration. Creative expression becomes another pathway for shadow work. Draw your inner critic. Write poetry from your wounded child's perspective, or dance the rage you've kept hidden. Art bypasses the rational mind and allows shadow material to emerge symbolically. Pay attention to your reactions to others throughout the day. When someone annoys or attracts you intensely, pause and ask, "What quality in them am I either denying or idealizing in myself?" This simple practice transforms daily interactions into opportunities for self-discovery. As shadow integration progresses, your empathic abilities transform from liability to asset. No longer do you absorb others' emotions unconsciously. Instead, you develop what I call conscious empathy, the ability to feel with others while maintaining your own center. You learn to distinguish between your emotions and others. When sadness arises, you pause and ask, "Is this mine, or am I picking up someone else's energy?" This discernment protects your well-being while allowing you to offer genuine support. Your sensitivity becomes a superpower when filtered through integrated shadow. You can sense what others need without sacrificing yourself to provide it. You offer presence instead of rescue, witnessing instead of fixing. This mature empathy serves others far more effectively than unconscious absorption ever could. The wounds that once made you vulnerable now become your greatest sources of wisdom. You understand suffering because you have walked through its valleys. You can guide others because you have found your way through the darkness. Your scars become credentials in the university of human experience. You begin to see your empathic nature not as individual affliction, but as collective service. You are an antenna for the unconscious emotions of humanity, helping to bring what is hidden into the light. This represents a sacred calling, not a personal burden. The integration of shadow transforms you into what Jung called the wounded healer, one who serves others not from a place of personal need, but from genuine wholeness. Your healing journey qualifies you to hold space for others' transformations without losing yourself in their process. You no longer need to be needed. This freedom allows you to offer genuine help rather than codependent rescue. You can walk away from situations that don't serve your highest good, knowing that your withdrawal sometimes provides the greatest gift to others. Your presence becomes medicine. People feel safe around you because you have made peace with your own darkness. You no longer project judgment onto others' shadow material because you have embraced your own. This creates space for authentic healing to occur. You understand that true healing happens when people reclaim their own power, not when you carry their burdens. Your job shifts from fixing others to reflecting their own strength back to them. This represents a profound maturation of the helping impulse. The wounded healer serves the collective by modeling what integration looks like. Your very existence proves that transformation is possible, that wounds can become wisdom, that sensitivity can coexist with strength. As you complete this inner work, you recognize that your individual healing serves a larger purpose. The world desperately needs empaths who have integrated their shadow, who can feel deeply without drowning, who can love fiercely without losing themselves. Our culture suffers from an epidemic of disconnection, mechanized systems, and collective shadow projection. Empaths who have done their inner work become bridges between the unconscious and conscious realms, translating emotional and spiritual wisdom for a world that has forgotten how to feel. Your transformation ripples outward in ways you may never fully comprehend. Every boundary you hold teaches others about self-respect. Every moment you choose authenticity over approval gives others permission to do the same. Your individuation clears pathways for others to follow. You become what Jung called a culture bearer, one who carries the soul of humanity forward. Your sensitivity, once a source of suffering, becomes a gift to collective consciousness. You help birth a new paradigm where strength and tenderness coexist. This is not about perfection. The warrior still bleeds, but no longer fears their own blood. Every wound becomes proof not of failure, but of initiation. Every battle survived grants authority to guide others through similar passages. Your journey from wounded to warrior represents more than personal healing. It embodies an archetypal shift occurring across humanity. The old paradigm that equated sensitivity with weakness is dying. In its place emerges a new understanding of empathy as essential for our collective survival. You have learned that your greatest sensitivity contains your greatest strength. The very porosity that once left you vulnerable now allows you to serve as a conscious conduit for healing energy. You can feel the world's pain without being destroyed by it, because you have learned to transform suffering into wisdom. The fear that once drove you to please others at your own expense has been alchemized into discernment. You now fear only one thing: betraying your authentic self. This clarity guides every choice, every relationship, every moment of your life. You stand now as proof that the wounded can become healers, that the sensitive can become strong, that empaths can transform fear into unshakable strength through shadow work. Your very existence serves as beacon for others still lost in the darkness of unconscious suffering. The world needs your light. Not the dimmed version you once offered to avoid threatening others, but the full radiance of your integrated being. You have become unstoppable, not because you avoid obstacles, but because you have learned to alchemize every challenge into wisdom, every wound into power, every fear into fuel for your soul's highest expression. This is your invitation to step fully into the truth of who you have always been, beneath the conditioning, beneath the wounds, beneath the fear. You are not just an empath who has healed. You are a warrior of consciousness, a guardian of the sacred, a bridge between worlds. Your time of hiding is over. Your time of rising has begun. There will come moments in your shadow work when the darkness feels infinite, when the old wounds seem to bleed more fiercely than ever before. This is what mystics have called the dark night of the soul. Not a sign that you are failing, but evidence that you are approaching the deepest layers of transformation. Jung understood that the psyche protects its most profound treasures behind the fiercest guardians. The closer you come to your authentic power, the more intensely your conditioned patterns will fight for survival. The parts of you that learn to find safety in smallness will resist your expansion with every tool at their disposal. During these times, you may feel as though you are losing your mind. The familiar landmarks of your identity dissolve. You no longer know who you are without your wounds, without your role as the one who saves others, without the familiar weight of carrying burdens that were never yours to bear. This dissolution is not destruction. It is sacred preparation. The alchemists called this phase nigredo, the blackening where all false structures must be dissolved before new form can emerge. You are not falling apart. You are falling together in a new configuration that can hold more light. The empaths who surrender to this process, rather than fighting it, find that the dark night becomes a cocoon of transformation. In the deepest darkness, they discover an indestructible light that has been waiting within them all along. This light is not dependent on external validation, not diminished by others' projections, not threatened by the world's chaos. Trust the darkness when it comes. It is not your enemy, but your teacher showing you what in your life no longer serves the person you are becoming. Let it strip away the false until only truth remains. Your body is the repository of every emotion you've ever suppressed, every boundary you've failed to hold, every time you've betrayed your authentic needs. Shadow work that remains purely intellectual will never create lasting transformation. The body must be included in the healing process. Empaths often develop chronic physical symptoms that mirror their emotional patterns. Digestive issues from swallowing feelings, headaches from taking on others' mental stress, autoimmune conditions from attacking the self instead of setting boundaries. These symptoms are not just medical problems, but communications from your shadow demanding attention to what has been ignored. Begin each day by scanning your body with curious attention. Where do you hold tension? What areas feel numb or disconnected? These physical sensations often correspond to aspects of your emotional experience you haven't fully processed. The tight jaw may hold years of unspoken truths. The heavy chest might carry grief you've never allowed yourself to fully feel. Breath work becomes a bridge between conscious awareness and unconscious material stored in your tissues. As you breathe deeply into areas of tension, memories and emotions may spontaneously arise. Don't analyze them immediately. Simply breathe and allow the body to discharge what it has been holding. Movement practices like dance, martial arts, or even vigorous walking can help mobilize stuck emotional energy. Many empaths discover that they've been unconsciously contracting their bodies to make themselves smaller, less threatening, more acceptable. Learning to take up space physically translates into taking up space energetically. The body also holds your power. Your nervous system can learn to stay regulated even when others around you are activated. Through practices like cold exposure, breathwork, or strength training, you teach your body that it can handle intensity without collapsing. This physical resilience supports your emotional boundaries. Touch becomes sacred when approached with awareness. Self-massage, warm baths, or receiving bodywork from skilled practitioners can help release trauma stored in your tissues. Your body begins to remember what safety feels like, what it means to be held without having to give anything in return. As you reclaim relationship with your physical form, you discover that your sensitivity exists not just in your emotions, but in every cell. Your body becomes an ally in discernment, alerting you to energetic dynamics before your mind recognizes them. This embodied awareness becomes one of your greatest strengths as an integrated empath. Your empathic gifts often carry the imprint of ancestral trauma, wounds passed down through bloodlines, patterns that repeat across generations until someone conscious enough to break the cycle is born. You may find yourself carrying depression that belongs to your grandmother, anxiety that originated with your great-grandfather's unprocessed war trauma, or compulsions to rescue others that stem from family myths about martyrdom. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious includes what we might call the family unconscious, the repository of unprocessed experiences that flow through genetic and energetic inheritance. As an empath, you may have been unconsciously chosen by your lineage to be the one who finally transforms these ancient wounds into wisdom. This recognition can initially feel overwhelming. How can you heal trauma that isn't even yours? But understanding ancestral patterns can also be profoundly liberating. Many of your struggles may not originate with personal failure, but with inherited survival strategies that no longer serve. Begin by exploring your family's emotional patterns with compassion rather than judgment. What themes repeat across generations? Addiction, depression, difficulty with boundaries, patterns of abandonment or enmeshment. These are not character flaws, but adaptive responses to circumstances your ancestors faced. In meditation or active imagination, you can dialogue with your ancestral lineage. Visualize yourself surrounded by the wise, healed aspects of your ancestors. Not their wounded personalities, but their essential spirits freed from trauma. Ask them what gifts they want to pass forward, what burdens they're ready to release. Ritual can be powerful for ancestral healing. Create ceremonies to honor your lineage while consciously choosing to transform inherited patterns. Light candles for ancestors who suffered, expressing gratitude for their survival while declaring your intention to live differently. Bury objects that represent old patterns, plant seeds that symbolize new growth. As you heal ancestral shadow, you may notice that family dynamics shift without direct intervention. Relatives may comment that you seem different, stronger, more centered. Your individual transformation ripples backward and forward through the bloodline, offering healing to those who came before and clearing the path for those who will follow. This work requires great compassion for your ancestors' struggles while maintaining firm boundaries around what you will and will not perpetuate. You can honor their sacrifice without repeating their mistakes. You can love your family while choosing your own path. This is the sacred responsibility of being a lineage breaker and pattern transformer. Intimate relationships become the most intense classroom for shadow integration. The people closest to us inevitably trigger our deepest wounds and activate our most defended places. This is not accident or misfortune. It is the psyche's way of bringing unconscious material into the light where it can be healed. For empaths, romantic relationships often replay childhood dynamics of overgiving and under-receiving. You may find yourself repeatedly attracted to partners who seem to need your help. You're healing your endless capacity to understand and forgive. These relationships feel familiar because they echo the template established in early life, where your worth was tied to your usefulness. The shadow work in relationship begins with recognizing your projections. The qualities you find most attractive or repulsive in partners often represent disowned aspects of yourself. The unavailable partner may mirror your own fear of intimacy. The selfish partner may reflect your unacknowledged need for healthy self-focus. Rather than trying to change your partner's shadow work, asks you to reclaim what you have projected. If their anger triggers you, explore your relationship with your own anger. If their neediness repels you, examine how you handle your own dependency needs. This inner work often transforms the relationship dynamic without requiring any changes from your partner. Healthy conflict becomes a tool for growth rather than something to avoid. When disagreements arise, instead of immediately seeking harmony, pause and ask what this tension might be revealing. Are you defending against a truth that needs to be heard? Is your partner expressing something you've suppressed in yourself? The integrated empath learns to show up authentically in relationship rather than performing the role of the understanding, accommodating partner. This may initially create turbulence as your partner adjusts to your new boundaries and authenticity. Some relationships cannot survive this transformation, and that too is part of the healing process. Those relationships that do survive your individuation become deeper and more genuine. When you no longer need your partner to complete you or validate your worth, you can love them for who they are, rather than what they provide. This conscious love is far more nourishing than codependent attachment. You begin to attract partners who meet you in your wholeness rather than your woundedness. These relationships are characterized by mutual growth, respect for boundaries, and the ability to support each other's individuation process. Love becomes a space for expansion rather than a prison of familiar patterns. Many empaths, in their desire to transcend their wounds, fall into the trap of spiritual bypassing, using spiritual concepts and practices to avoid the messy work of psychological integration. They may speak of love and light while denying their shadow claim to have forgiven while harboring unconscious resentment, or use meditation to escape rather than integrate difficult emotions. Jung warned against this premature transcendence, understanding that true spirituality requires the integration of all aspects of the psyche, including the dark and difficult. Light without shadow creates inflation, a dangerous identification with only the good aspects of the self, while projecting all negativity onto others. The spiritually bypassed empath may appear evolved on the surface while remaining unconsciously manipulative underneath. They use their sensitivity as a weapon, claiming to feel others' emotions while actually projecting their own unprocessed material. They speak of compassion while being mercilessly critical of themselves or others who don't meet their standards of consciousness. True spiritual development includes what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposites in creative tension. This means embracing both your capacity for love and your capacity for hatred, your wisdom and your ignorance, your strength and your vulnerability. Authentic shadow work actually deepens spiritual experience by creating a more honest foundation for transcendence. When you stop pretending to be only light, you can genuinely appreciate the light when it appears. When you acknowledge your human limitations, you can humbly receive grace when it flows through you. The integrated spiritual path honors the journey through darkness as sacred as the journey toward light. Your wounds become sacred wounds. Your struggles become sacred struggles. Nothing in your experience is deemed unspiritual or unworthy of inclusion in your wholeness. This integration protects you from the spiritual narcissism that can develop when empaths identify too strongly with their sensitivity. You recognize that your gifts are not evidence of your superiority, but tools for service. Your healing becomes an offering to the collective, rather than a personal achievement to be displayed. Shadow integration is ultimately a relational process, requiring mirrors and witnesses to help us see what remains unconscious. While the journey includes necessary periods of solitude, attempting to do all shadow work in isolation can perpetuate the very patterns you're trying to heal. Empaths often struggle with community because their sensitivity makes group dynamics overwhelming. They may withdraw into isolation or conversely lose themselves in others' energy. Creating conscious community requires learning to maintain your center while remaining open to connection. Seek out others who are committed to their own shadow work rather than those who want to remain unconscious. This might include therapy groups, spiritual communities focused on psychological integration, or informal gatherings of people committed to authentic growth. The quality of consciousness matters more than the specific format. In these relationships, practice speaking your truth even when it feels uncomfortable. Share your projections and ask for feedback about your blind spots. Allow others to see your struggles without immediately trying to fix or minimize them. This vulnerability creates the safety for others to do the same. Learn to receive support without immediately reciprocating. Many empaths compulsively give because they cannot tolerate the vulnerability of receiving. Practice sitting with others' care without feeling obligated to return it immediately. This breaks the pattern of keeping relationships even and allows genuine intimacy to develop. Create agreements about how to handle conflict and difficult emotions within your community. Establish norms that support authentic expression while maintaining respect and safety. Learn to navigate disagreement without abandoning yourself or attacking others. As your community matures, it becomes a laboratory for practicing new patterns. You can experiment with setting boundaries, expressing anger constructively, or taking up more space while surrounded by supportive witnesses. This practice strengthens your capacity to embody these changes in the wider world. The community itself becomes a healing force, demonstrating that authentic connection is possible when people commit to their own wholeness. Your individual shadow work serves the collective, and the collective mirrors support your individual growth. There comes a moment in the empath's journey when the identity shift from wounded victim to empowered healer crystallizes. This is not a gradual transition, but an initiation. A decisive moment when you step across the threshold into a new relationship with your sensitivity and your purpose. The initiation often comes through crisis. A relationship ending, a health challenge, a professional failure, or dark night of the soul that strips away your remaining illusions about who you thought you were. In this breaking open, the false self that was built around your wounds finally dies, creating space for your authentic power to emerge. You may recognize this initiation through dreams of death and rebirth, visions of being crowned or receiving sacred objects, or encounters with wise figures who acknowledge your new status. These are not fantasies, but symbolic communications from your psyche recognizing that you have crossed an important threshold. The wounded healer archetype carries specific responsibilities. You are now called to serve others, healing not from your wounds, but from your wholeness. Your scars become credentials, your struggles become wisdom, your sensitivity becomes medicine. But you can only offer what you have genuinely integrated within yourself. This role requires ongoing vigilance against falling back into old patterns. The wounded healer can become inflated, believing they are meant to save everyone, or they can become identified with their healing abilities rather than their essential being. Regular shadow work prevents these distortions. You learn to distinguish between serving from your gifts and serving from your wounds. When you help others from woundedness, both parties remain stuck. When you offer support from wholeness, transformation becomes possible. This discernment protects both you and those you serve. The wounded healer understands that their primary healing happens through their own continued growth rather than through fixing others. You become a living demonstration that transformation is possible, that wounds can become wisdom, that sensitivity can coexist with strength. Your very presence becomes therapeutic. People feel safe around you because you have made peace with your own darkness. You no longer need them to be different than they are because you have accepted all aspects of yourself. This unconditional presence creates the space for others to meet their own wholeness. As your integration deepens, you face the challenge of living authentically in a world that often rewards unconsciousness over awareness, performance over authenticity, and quick fixes over deep transformation. Your sensitivity, once a liability, becomes a compass guiding you toward environments and relationships that support your continued growth. You develop what might be called conscious discernment, the ability to sense whether situations will nourish or deplete your energy before fully engaging with them. This isn't about avoiding all challenge, but about choosing your battles wisely and engaging from a place of strength rather than compulsion. Your career may shift as you align with work that allows you to use your gifts authentically. Many integrated empaths become therapists, teachers, artists, or healers. But the specific form matters less than whether it allows you to contribute from your wholeness rather than your woundedness. You learn to navigate social situations without losing yourself. At parties or gatherings, you can feel the emotional atmosphere while maintaining your own center. You offer presence without absorbing others' projections. You can engage authentically without feeling responsible for managing everyone's comfort. Your relationship with news and media transforms. Rather than avoiding all difficult information or becoming overwhelmed by the world's pain, you develop the capacity to stay informed while maintaining your equilibrium. You can feel compassion for global suffering without taking it into your body as personal trauma. The integrated empath becomes a stabilizing force in chaotic environments. Co-workers notice they feel calmer around you. Friends seek your perspective because you can see situations clearly without getting lost in drama. Your nervous system's regulation affects others through the mysterious process of co-regulation. You stop apologizing for your sensitivity while also taking responsibility for managing it skillfully. You no longer blame others for triggering you while also refusing to minimize the impact of genuinely harmful behavior. This mature stance models healthy empathy for others who struggle with similar challenges. Your home becomes a sanctuary where you can fully restore your energy. You create spaces that support your sensitivity, perhaps through beautiful objects, natural elements, or simply the absence of overstimulating inputs. This environment becomes essential for maintaining your capacity to serve others. Your personal shadow work creates waves of change that extend far beyond your individual life. As you heal your own patterns, you stop unconsciously perpetuating them in your relationships, your family system, and your community. This creates space for new patterns to emerge. Family members may comment that you seem different, stronger, more peaceful. Some may feel threatened by your changes and attempt to pull you back into old dynamics. Others may be inspired by your transformation and begin their own healing journey. Your role is to remain centered in your new patterns without trying to force others to change. Children are especially sensitive to the shifts in your energy. As you integrate your shadow and embody your authentic power, young people around you absorb this template of what healthy empathy looks like. You become a model of strength and sensitivity coexisting rather than competing. Your professional relationships transform as you bring your integrated self to work. You may find that conflicts resolve more easily because you're no longer unconsciously triggering others' shadows. Projects may flow more smoothly because your clear energy helps others access their own clarity. In social situations, your presence often shifts the entire dynamic. Conversations become deeper because you're not afraid of intensity. People feel permission to be authentic because you're modeling authenticity. Drama decreases because you're not feeding it with your reactions. The ripple effects extend beyond personal relationships into collective healing. Every person who integrates their shadow contributes to the healing of humanity's collective shadow. Your individual work becomes a gift to the whole, demonstrating that transformation is possible and inspiring others to undertake their own journey. This is why your healing matters, not just for your personal well-being, but for the evolution of consciousness itself. In a world drowning in projection and unconsciousness, each person who reclaims their disowned aspects helps tip the balance toward greater awareness and authenticity. Shadow integration is not a problem to be solved, but a way of being to be cultivated throughout your lifetime. As you grow and evolve, new aspects of your personality may be relegated to shadow, requiring ongoing attention and integration. This is not failure, but the natural process of psychological development. Life will continue to offer you mirrors for unintegrated aspects of your psyche. New relationships, career challenges, health crises, and life transitions all activate different shadow material. The difference is that you now have tools and perspective to work with these activations consciously, rather than being overwhelmed by them. Your dreams continue to be a valuable source of information about emerging shadow material. As you integrate obvious projections, more subtle aspects may emerge through symbolic imagery. A regular dream practice keeps you connected to the ongoing communications from your unconscious. The mature approach to shadow work includes self-compassion for the parts of yourself you discover that you don't like. You learn to hold your flaws and limitations with the same kindness you would offer a good friend. This compassionate stance prevents shadow work from becoming another form of self-attack. You develop the capacity to hold multiple truths simultaneously. You can be proud of your growth while acknowledging areas that still need attention. You can love others while recognizing their unconscious patterns. You can feel grateful for your sensitivity while maintaining healthy boundaries around it. Regular check-ins with trusted friends, therapists, or spiritual teachers help you identify blind spots and projections you might miss on your own. Humility becomes a strength, allowing you to receive feedback without defensiveness and continue growing throughout your life. The journey of shadow integration ultimately leads to what Jung called individuation, not perfection, but wholeness. You become increasingly yourself, freed from the compulsion to be who others want you to be or who you think you should be. This authentic presence is your greatest gift to the world. As an individuated empath, you embody the possibility that sensitivity and strength can coexist, that feeling deeply doesn't require drowning in others' emotions, that caring for others can include caring for yourself. You become living proof that the wounded can indeed become healers, that empaths can transform fear into strength through the sacred work of shadow integration. Your journey continues, but you no longer walk it alone or unconsciously. You have companions, both inner and outer, to support your continued growth. You have tools to work with whatever life presents. Most importantly, you have unshakable knowing that you are enough exactly as you are, and that your sensitivity is not a curse, but a calling to serve the healing of the world. The journey continues. What shadow will you face today? What boundary will you honor? What aspect of your authentic self will you finally allow to see the light? Share your experience with shadow work in the comments below. Your story becomes part of the healing web that connects empaths worldwide. Subscribe for more insights into transforming sensitivity into strength through the wisdom of Carl Jung, empath, and personal development teachings.